Right now, tools like ChatGPT are recommending your competitors to your customers. Do you have any idea how often that's happening? Do you know how often you're showing up? Well, that's exactly what AI share of voice lets you measure. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to find your AI share of voice, and I'm going to give you 3 methods that you can use today to start improving it. But this isn't just about improving a single metric, it is really about increasing how often your brand shows up as the solution to your target audience's problems. Let's get started. AI share of voice is a measure of how visible your brand is compared to your competitors for relevant prompts and questions that your target audience is asking AI tools like ChatGPT and Google AI Mode. Now, you can calculate AI share of voice with a very simple formula. It's just your total AI mentions divided by the total AI mentions across all brands in your category multiplied by 100. Now, you're not actually going to need to use this formula at any point because the tool I'm going to show you does all this calculation for you. Now, it's a rough metric, but it gives you a good indication of how often and how prominently your brand is showing up in AI search. By tracking your AI share of voice, you get an instant benchmark of how your visibility compares to your competitors. And that's handy on its own because once you have a way to track it, you can then point to it as an indicator as you implement fixes and various tactics to improve your AI optimization. So as you update content, as you improve your topic coverage, and as you get more brand mentions, your AI share of voice will indicate whether those changes are translating into stronger AI visibility. But to go back to the competitor side of things, it's also really useful for pointing you towards competitors that may be worth analyzing further as part of a deeper competitor analysis. Now, we have a full separate video on performing a competitor analysis where I go into more detail on different ways you can do this, including how you can perform AI topic gap analysis to spot gaps in your own strategy. I recommend checking that video out next, but now let's take a look at how you can actually measure your AI share of voice. To measure your AI share of voice, you can use Semrush's AI Visibility Toolkit, and in particular, this Brand Performance tab. So just head to the Brand Performance tab, enter your domain here, and then click Analyze. You can see I've performed a bunch of these already, so I'll just show you one of these reports, for example. So when you run the report, you should see a page that looks something like this. The first thing you'll probably notice is this share of voice versus sentiment graph on the right hand side. This shows your brand's share of voice along the bottom compared with your sentiment score, which I'll come back to in a second, against the competitors that you have chosen to analyze, and you can remove them here or you can add some new ones up the top. And you will also see this compared to other. Now, don't be alarmed here if this looks really high compared to your share of voice. That's just because this typically consists of a bunch of different brands that you aren't directly analyzing. And so it's understandable that if there are, say, 30 other brands in your space, they're likely to have a reasonably high combined share of voice compared to your individual share of voice or even the share of voice across your top 4 or 5 rivals. So if you want a more zoomed in look at your share of voice versus your direct competitors, you can just untick this other box. So you can see in this example, Pet Libro, the brand that we are analyzing here, has the highest share of voice among its key competitors at 14.3%. It has a reasonable sentiment score of 69%, but you can see that some of the competitors like Sure Pet Care over here have quite a low share of voice, but a much higher sentiment score. Now, I'll touch on sentiment again later in the video, but essentially your sentiment score here is all about how positively your brand is being described. So ideally, you'll have a high share of voice and a high sentiment score, and you can think about it logically in that if an AI tool is saying good things about your brand, it's probably going to be more likely to recommend you. And if it keeps doing that, and if it keeps finding reasons to do that online, other people are also saying good things about you across other websites, forums, YouTube, that kind of thing, then the tool will probably start mentioning your brand more and more, and you become a brand with a higher share of voice alongside that positive sentiment represented here by the high sentiment score. So ideally, what you want is high sentiment score and high share of voice. Up and to the right is usually what we want. So before I show you a couple more details here, I just want to call out that you can choose to see this on specific platforms, and this is useful if you want to measure your share of voice versus competitors across individual AI platforms. You also see separate views of your brand sentiment and share of voice down here. And there's a lot more information within this report, but I'm just going to stick with the share of voice for now. And in fact, we're going to head to the narrative drivers tab for a slightly different look at our share of voice. I mentioned you can change the platform. You can still do that on this tab, but you can actually see your share of voice by platform in this chart here. So you can see how Petlibro compares to its rivals, again, including this other tab at the bottom. You can unclick that if you want to see a more zoomed in view. You can see how the brand is performing across all 4 different platforms. Again, you can compare that to your rivals. So this is really helpful for understanding if, say, you have a really high share of voice on one platform, but a really low share of voice on another, then that's something you would want to dig into further. Or if you have a very similar share of voice to your competitors across 3 out of 4 platforms, but they have a really high share of voice compared to you on one specific platform, then again, that's something you would want to dig into a little bit deeper to understand how you can boost your share of voice on that platform. So for example, here you can see Petlibro has a pretty high share of voice across most platforms, but on Perplexity, it's kind of lagging at about 4%. And I can zoom in a little bit further by unclicking these. But CatMate has a 10% share of voice. Now, if we compare that to something like Google AI mode, Petlibro has almost the opposite trend of being much higher than CatMate, although CatMate is still exceeding the other 3 rivals on this specific platform. Now, you're naturally going to see some variance across all these platforms. They all have different training data sets and they might weight trusted sources differently. So don't expect to see identical share of voice numbers across each platform. But what you don't want to see is a strong share of voice in one platform, but really low share of voice in another. If you do, that points to a platform-specific issue that you'll probably want to get on top of. So if I was Petlibro, I'd be really happy with my share of voice in Google AI mode, but I'd be wanting to understand why it drops significantly in Perplexity compared to CatMate, which has 10% in both. Down below that, you can see another chart, this time mapping share of voice versus your competitors over time. Now, this is really useful for reporting to key stakeholders and really showing the value of your AI optimization efforts. So you can point to increases in your share of voice and match it up with content pushes or brand mention campaigns to illustrate how your optimization efforts are leading to greater AI visibility. So this is how you can track your brand's AI share of voice, but I'm sure what you really want to know is how you can improve it. So I'm now going to share 3 methods of improving your brand's AI share of voice in the order of effort and investment that each one requires. Our first method to improve your brand's AI share of voice is to close topic gaps between you and your competitors. If your rivals are currently appearing for a bunch of topics and AI responses that you're just not showing up for at all, then that's a clear gap that will help improve your share of voice if you're able to close it. Now, to find topic gaps that you want to close, head back to the Semrush AI Visibility Toolkit, and this time go to the Competitor Research tab. Here, you want to enter your domain again, along with some rivals. I recommend starting with 1 or 2 at first, and then just click Run Competitor Analysis. So you'll see a page like this, but you want to scroll down to this Topics and Prompts section and click on the Missing tab. This will show you a bunch of topics that your rival, so in this case Beanbox, is appearing for that you're not. So I'm currently analysing the drinkatrade.com domain, and you can see we have 113 missing topics. Now, if you click into each of these, you can see the exact prompts that your competitor is appearing for that you're not. And if you click View Full Response, you can see the entire response from the AI tool for that prompt. It will also show you the brands that are mentioned. So in here, I like to do a Command F search, and I just type in the brand name so that I can instantly see where in the response they're actually mentioned. So I would say that this Beanbox mention, although it is relatively far down, is actually quite prominent in a prompt as general as this. Now, you might find things in here that aren't super relevant for you, but that your competitors are appearing for. That doesn't make it an automatic gap that you need to close. It just has to be something that is actually relevant to your business. So your competitor might be appearing for some topics because of a brand relationship that they had years ago, or because of a specific campaign that they ran for a product that they no longer sell. So just because you see 100 missing topics in here does not mean that you have 100 topic gaps that you need to close. As with any kind of content gap analysis, you want to focus on relevance and what kinds of topics are actually likely to bring results for your business if you were to appear for them. So you might have an AI share of voice of 0 for a topic like pour over coffee equipment and techniques, but if your brand doesn't sell anything to do with pour over coffee, then that AI share of voice of 0 doesn't actually matter, because you don't want to appear for topics that are irrelevant to your business and are unlikely to drive any revenue or customers or signups, just like you wouldn't want to appear for a bunch of keywords in Google search that again have no relation to your business or what you sell. So once you find your list of topic gaps that you want to close, you can then start creating new content on them or optimizing your existing content to cover them, and then tracking how your AI share of voice changes over time. Again, you can do that using the Narrative Drivers tab within the Semrush AI Visibility Toolkit. Ideally, these AI tools will start picking your brand brand up as relevant to these missing topics, and then your AI share of voice will also increase as a result. Now, this next method is a step up in terms of effort, but it can have huge implications for your brand's AI share of voice. So next, you want to expand your brand's visibility on other channels beyond your own website, because appearing on review sites, industry publications, forums, and social media platforms can increase the chances of your brand showing up prominently in AI responses. If you run a prompt yourself in a tool like ChatGPT, you probably won't be surprised to hear at this point that a lot of these tools tend to like to cite sources like LinkedIn and YouTube and other social media sites. So if you're not showing up on any of these platforms, these AI tools can't learn anything about your brand from those platforms, but if they can learn about your competitors over there, they may be more likely to recommend their brand over yours. Now, you can get an idea of the kind of platforms that you should ideally show up on by running your own checks. So running your own prompts like this within these tools and then just looking at the sources tab to see what websites show up most often. But a streamlined way to do this at scale is to stay within the competitor research tab that we were in for the previous tip, but then click on the sources option instead of topics and prompts, and then again click on the missing tab. So here we're basically just showing all the sources where LLMs are finding information about our competitors, but not about us because we're not showing up on those platforms. Now, taking action on this definitely does require a fair bit of effort because your brand might never have run social media campaigns. You might not have a YouTube channel, and you might have never played around with Reddit marketing or partnerships with other websites. But if there's one thing that has been clear about AI search for almost as long as it has been around, it's that these tools love to go to third-party platforms to verify information, crowdsource user sentiment, and to make recommendations based on more than just what brands are saying on their own website about themselves, and really looking at what is everybody else saying. Now, if you have a really small team, then start small. Try and set up a YouTube channel where you aim to upload a new video each month just to give these tools something to learn from that isn't just what they can see on your website or what other people might be saying elsewhere that you don't control. You don't necessarily have to create the videos for your channel. You could reach out to influencers in your space or other channels and run partnerships to get content out there that hopefully these AI tools will learn about your brand from, and then hopefully as a result, your AI share of voice will start increasing. But if you don't want to start on YouTube, check out our video all about building trust and awareness on Reddit instead. Okay, let's take things further with method 3. The final method to improve your brand's AI share of voice is to improve your brand sentiment. Now, you remember right at the start of the video when I showed you how to measure your brand's share of voice, I showed you this chart of share of voice versus sentiment score, and I said that positive sentiment can help you improve your AI share of voice. But how do you improve your brand sentiment? Well, first of all, you need to understand what is actually affecting your brand sentiment in AI tools. One easy and free way to do this is to just go into AI tools and type in a simple comparison query or ask the tool directly about your brand and see what it tells you. For example, in Google AI mode here, I just ran a simple prompt of MailChimp versus MailerLite. And the idea is that if I was representing one of these brands, this would serve as a bit of an indicator as to how this particular AI tool, so Google AI mode, understands my brand's strengths and weaknesses in particular compared to this specific competitor. So if I was MailChimp, then it would be compared to MailerLite, but I could run this for various other competitors, or I could run a bunch of different prompts and basically just see how my brand is being represented by the AI tool as if this was one of my target customers typing in this prompt. So the tool will usually output something different every time. Obviously, that's just the nature of these tools, but it will often output something like this feature comparison table, especially if you are asking for a direct comparison between yourself and another brand, and it will categorize a bunch of different things that at a glance makes it really easy for you to understand essentially the sentiment around your brand for that specific category. So in this case, you would be able to understand at a glance how your brand stacks up in terms of value for money. So is it affordable or is it expensive? Is it easy to use, or does it come with a steep learning curve? How do your different plans shape up against the plans that your competitors offer? And any specific features that users of these kinds of tools or products or services would actually be looking for. These are all different things that can impact how an AI tool is going to understand your solution. So obviously this method is not perfect, but it's a useful and quick way to gauge brand sentiment across a bunch of key factors that may be influencing whether or not a user makes a purchase after encountering your brand in an AI response. But also, if tools have a positive view of your brand, they are going to be more likely to recommend it, and therefore your AI share of voice is likely to increase. But to go further than just manually prompting tools about your brand and competitors, there are a bunch of different ways that you can find out more about your brand sentiment within Semrush's AI Visibility Toolkit. The Perception tab is one of the quickest and easiest ways to get started and to get a read on what exactly is affecting AI answers that mention your brand. So I'll head to the perception tab and I will scroll down to this key sentiment drivers section. So here you'll see your brand strength factors, which are things that are influencing the positive sentiment around your brand, and then areas for improvement. These are areas where you could be improving things with your content or your messaging or even your products themselves to improve the sentiment and as a result, potentially increase your brand's AI share of voice. Now, a lot of the time, the areas for improvement here are not going to be things that, for example, your content or SEO teams can handle. And so that's why this is more of an advanced tip that may require more collaboration across your teams. But for many brands, the areas that you see highlighted for improvement here are things that you can improve with more consistent messaging and content that you can control. One final aspect of this tool that I want to call out is that if you scroll down to the bottom here, you'll see AI feature descriptions. This is really useful for understanding the exact language that these tools are using when they mention your brand. And you can see here the kind of broad description, but if you click into it, you can see the exact language that the tools are using whenever your brand appears in their responses. So for a brand like Trade, there are phrases in here like highly personalized. All of these things you can imagine being quite strong indicators for somebody choosing a coffee subscription that is looking for a personalized option or something that is highly customizable. Now, obviously that's all positive, but if the language you see here doesn't match up with the kind of sentiment or the kind of features or descriptions that you would use for your own brand, then this is where you want to make changes to your content or your messaging, or again, if possible, your product and how you're marketing it in a wider sense. Again, obviously this is a more advanced tip, since this will typically go much further than an SEO's responsibilities, and you probably need to talk to your product teams and also social media teams and other departments, because your brand sentiment isn't just influenced by your blog posts or product descriptions. It is also influenced by things like your social media presence and how you're being talked about on other websites that you might not be able to control at all. But this comes back to the previous method of expanding your visibility across more than just your website. You do need to go beyond your website if you want to really increase your brand's AI share of voice in the long run. So if you can do all three of these things consistently, filling topic gaps, expanding beyond your own website, and boosting your brand sentiment, you'll be well on your way to increasing your brand's AI share of voice. If you want to learn more about getting ChatGPT in particular to recommend your brand, check out our dedicated video where Brian goes through 4 steps to getting ChatGPT to recommend your brand ahead of your competitors. And be sure to subscribe to the Semrush channel for more videos like this, as every week we share videos dedicated to helping your brand show up more wherever your audience is searching. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.